But so, Mark, I want to ask you sort of a different kind of question. I understand all this, and I think it's hugely important what you're doing, and want to know sort of who you think the next 3 or 4 states are that are going to sign on. But if you're willing to go on record,
Yeah.
But I guess my question is, a more conventional way, no pun intended, to do this might be to take each of those three things and try to get Congress to pass them, right? So rather than, because I understand now a little better than I did before about the process and sort of the fail safes, I think, that are in place, why not go through the traditional amendment process in Congress and try to get the legislators to propose congressional amendments to the Constitution that way?
Look, I mean, I think in theory that's a beautiful thing, and I guess I would ask you a question in response, Robert, which is, what do you think the odds are of Congress passing a balanced budget amendment or a term limits amendment or anything that takes their own power away? And that's sort of rhetorical, but I'll answer it for you in terms of human nature, which the framers understood well, which is people don't voluntarily limit their own power. I mean, we have very few examples in history. George Washington was asked to be a king, and he said that that was outrageous. But if you want to go through history, try to find examples of tyrants, people who've overstepped their reach, overstepped their legal bounds, saying, you know what, I think I might be outside of my bounds, and I'd like to give power back to the people, or I want to give power to somebody else. That's just not human nature. In the 1980s, by the way, we were very close to calling a convention on term limits. We got to 32 states. And yet the states started to push back. We had a term limits amendment that was proposed in Congress. You can watch the video of this online as they cheer in Congress as that proposed amendment is defeated by a single vote. They're never going to pass it. It takes 2/3 of both houses. We can barely get 50% of either house. To get 2/3 of both houses to agree to limit their power, I'd say we'd be waiting for all of eternity.
Okay, fair enough. So in this process, I mean, do you think that you will be successful in getting a convention of states called? And if so, how long? I mean, no one's going to hold you. Well, it's going to be 3 days and 3 years and 2 months in one day.
Yeah.
But I mean, how far out is this process going? Who do you think the next states are that are going to sign aboard this? And realistically speaking, if you had to prognosticate, you would think that a convention of states would be called, if you're successful, by the year 2028. I'm making this up, of course.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I want to say it's really hard. This has taken a long time. It's a lot longer than I would like. I've been at it 10 years, but this is what the framers intended. In other words, they didn't want it to be easy to amend the Constitution. This is a big deal, right? You're going to go in and you're going to amend the founding charter of the United States of America, the base code of the United States of America. That's a big deal, and it should be really hard. It should take years. It should take a national consensus. It should take millions of people. So while I get frustrated on a human level sometimes, I think this is how the process was intended to work. Are we going to get there? Yep, we're going to get there. And the reason I say we're going to get there is it's kind of an either or. If we can't take power away from Washington, D.C., then Washington, D.C. is going to crash the country. And we just saw this in the debt ceiling debate. Even at its best, the plan that was proposed by the Republicans before they caved in and gave a bunch of it away wasn't going to do anything to fix any of these problems. And you can look back through all of American history. And by all, I mean go all the way back to the founding, Washington, all the way through to the current administration. Every administration, except for Calvin Coolidge's administration, has grown the government. And so that's the only way we're going to do it. So yeah, I think we're going to get it done. When we get it done, right now, I'm saying 2028, maybe 2030. I say those numbers because we have to make it through enough electoral cycles. We currently have 30 states with both houses controlled by Republicans. I'll be working to help flip Virginia. Their House of Delegates flipped in the last cycle. It's up this year for their Senate. So I'm hoping we can finish that off and flip Virginia. And then there are a few other states we're going to have to flip to get to 34 because I don't think any Democrat states are going to pass this.
I was going to ask you that. Is there a state whose legislature is controlled by the Democrats that has signed on board?
No, none. But to be fair,
what does that tell you?
Yeah, but to be fair, we are seeing more and more Democrats in states either controlled by Republicans or Democrat states who are coming on board with Convention of States. it's really important that we couch this properly. It's not a partisan thing. It's partisan in the sense that I'm a conservative. Mike Ferris, my co-founder, is a conservative. A lot of the people who stood up for it, Mark Levin did a whole show on it this week. He's a conservative. But the reality is, all we're saying is take the power away from DC and give it back to the states. And that means that a very liberal state like California, a liberal state like Vermont or Connecticut, these are states would have more power under the Constitution post convention of states that we're proposing. So it's not about giving conservatives more power or giving liberals more power. This is truly just about restoring federalism.